All right, everybody. Welcome back to Gradual Growth, the tough experiences with Vinny and Eric, two aspiring counselors talking about things they think they know. What's up, man?
What's up, Vinny?
I just want to start by saying I feel so much more comfortable this time around.
Are you sure about that?
Don't do that. Because we're not doing this for a grade. And I'm not trying to formulate everything that I'm trying to say on the spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel so much more cash.
Yeah, definitely.
So
This is my Vinny time. I'm gonna use this whole hour to just talk to my boy.
Yeah, of course. This is my Eric time. I have it scheduled to my Google
right.
Calendar. But yeah, first I just wanted to check in with you. I know we're already into the first week of summer courses, but I just wanted to check in and see how was your finals week?
Oh, that's such a good question. Finals week. Honestly, I already blocked it out.
You said it's done.
Too much stress, too much to think about. I got it taken care of in the moment. I haven't thought about it since.
Right.
It went good though. I finished the semester. That's all that matters, honestly.
Right. I mean, well, let me ask you this. Was your finals week was it jam-packed? Because I feel like we had the podcast, and then we had the 523 paper, and did finishing those up kind of all collide into finals week for you?
I will say, actually, my semester was pretty spaced out pretty well. Like most of my assignments, I finished way before finals week, and then the ones I did need to finish, I was able to take it in stride because there wasn't too many. I will say I kind of stressed myself out more than I should have with the podcast. I put way too much effort into learning the audio programs and editing way more than I should have. But that's okay. It turned out okay, and I still finished everything. So,
well, you know what? The first episode came out amazing, so props to you for that. For those listening, Eric went ham on the editing for that episode. And the skills that you have now, you're going to carry them forward. Who knows when you'll need them again?
That's right.
What if you just drop out of grad school and become a podcast editor?
Podcast editor and DJ. That's my next goal.
I love that.
What about you? How'd finals go for you?
It went pretty smooth as far as 523 and 520. I think the 518 paper is what really broke me down because I'm a professional procrastinator, so I just really had to grind it out a little bit. I actually paced myself a little bit better this time around, but for sure it was just that finals week grind time mode for a little bit, and then finally hitting that submit button feels so nice. I think that's something I would like to talk about with you is how hard it is to hit submit, especially on a big paper, not the papers that are broken up by section and you do your revisions as you go. The ones that are all just one complete paper, one submission, that's it.
Listen, I thought I was getting better at it, and I was wrong. I've been torn back down to earth because last semester I submitted a paper, and then after submitting it, I'd shown it to Devin to look at it and kind of get a feel for how I wrote so that she could start writing hers.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Hey, you did your references wrong." It's I already fucking submitted it.
Damn.
It's already in the database. So
that's tough.
I was feeling better about it. I was starting to get less and less anxiety every time I press that submit button, but now I'm right back down to square one.
I had the exact same experience as you. I submitted it, and something about the formatting was wrong, and I was just I'm not going back and adding a new submission. It is what it is.
Yeah.
For the sake of my mental health.
All right. So for this podcast, one thing that we wanted to do was kind of give back to the CSUF cohort and the new cohort coming in this fall. So we kind of wanted to take a second each episode to talk about like previous classes that we've experienced, like professors that we've had classes with, and then kind of just like go into detail about what might be in store, what was hard, what was easy. You know, just kind of give the next cohort a vibe of what they're coming into.
Yes, definitely. And we were actually thinking about starting that off with the very place where me and Eric met each other. That was 500, which is the introduction to the counseling profession. That class was actually very fun. It's very discussion driven, especially if you take Brew.
Loved Brew.
Yes, she was a great instructor. And that's kind of where you get the little bits and pieces of introductory topics for each aspect in the field, right?
I think the thing that I liked most about 500 was it was very much that like intro to counseling. Like we were all a bunch of like fresh people like coming in from all sorts of other places, and like just like that was like when we like met each other, and that's where we like started forming bonds, and that's where we realized that we weren't like alone and feeling like we were imposters and all that stuff. Like
Yes.
500 was a stepping stone into the program for sure.
Yes, and I think what really helped that is that we had a lot of big personalities in the room. I feel like I would say, like you definitely have
Say it.
a somewhat big aura that you bring with yourself. And we had Cass, we had Laura, and we had a number of other people that just like we're not afraid to speak up. You know what I mean? And all great people. So that made the discussions all the more like not just enjoyable, but it had a lot more things to take away from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If there was something for the younger cohorts that you would want them to know about that class before going into it, what would it be?
I think the biggest thing is that no matter who's teaching the 500 class, they're going to take care of you.
Yeah.
We got Leah, and she was amazing. She's really good at just giving it to you. Like, she's real. She'll just give you the facts.
Yeah.
Like, she teaches ethics, too, and, like, she will just give you the facts, and she will lay it out, and she'll just be real with you. And every professor has their own style, and everybody has their own, you know, technique for, like, teaching and then also being a counselor. And no matter what, like, there's some great professors in this program, and they'll take care of you. And that class, you kind of just soak it all in.
Yeah, definitely. I think because the only two professors that teach 500 are Brew and Price, right?
It rotates like every semester because I'm pretty sure. I think next semester Brew's probably not teaching it because I think she's going on sabbatical or something.
She just went on sabbatical, right?
I have no clue what's going on.
Yeah, Leah just came back from sabbatical, and then Dr. Price is taking time off.
Right.
Yeah.
Dr. Price is taking time off, so somebody else will be hopping in. I think it might be.
Most likely.
I forgot. I'm not even going to pretend like I know. But no matter who it is,
we do have a new professor coming in. I believe so.
That's true. I've heard about that a little bit.
Totally forget her name, but we do have a new person. But yeah, 500 with Brew was amazing. In 500, that's where you start to do a lot of your own like personal work.
Yeah. Like they definitely don't take any time like making sure that what you're doing in this program is self-reflection.
Right.
Like that first 500 paper it's a doozy.
It's a lot. I can't count the number of times that I cried while writing that damn paper.
I feel you.
Fun fact. I I went to Brew's office hours literally just for help on the paper and like formatting what the topic should be.
Right.
And I went into her office hours and I was talking to her about more of like the semantics of the paper. And she was like, nah, put that to the side. Like, okay, let's talk about like let's talk about what's really lying underneath here. Like, explain it to me, yada yada yada. 30 minutes goes by and I'm holding back tears. I'm like, and mind you,
just met this woman.
just met her, and the office hours were online and I was at work, so I locked myself in an office. No. And I got off of the office hours and I had to like reset to just like breathe for a second and then go back to work. That was very intense, but it was very helpful, I will say. A lot of the work that you're going to do is going to be probably uncomfortable or
absolutely,
probably painful, especially if you're someone like me that has avoided and escaped from issues for so long and not confronted them. It's not going to be pleasant at some points, but in the long run, it's going to help you a lot.
Yeah, I definitely I want to build on what you just said, because for me writing that 500 paper, I took a little bit different approach, and I very much took my time. I knew that I was going to struggle with it. So I was kind of prepared, but not prepared for what actually came. But I would start writing that paper, and I interviewed my mom for it and all that. And I definitely never talked to anybody in my family about topics like that. So the conversations were hard, and then writing it and actually putting it on paper and thinking through everything and really just putting it all out into the world, so exhausting. I had to take usually I can write a paper and I'll just keep writing. And I'll edit, and it's easy peasy, and I can get through it. But these papers, and it's going to be like this throughout the entire program, you got to take time. You got to take breaks. You got to give yourself a second, because they beat you down. They make you think about things you do not want to think about.
Yes, totally agree. And I think that's a big theme of this program in general, is that it's honestly not that it's not that material heavy, relative to what I've heard from people in other master's programs or other doctoral programs. Even the workload that we have isn't as severe. It's more so that what we're applying to ourselves is so heavy and deep that it's exhausting to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. It's less physically exhausting from writing the papers, and more emotionally exhausting and spiritually exhausting.
Absolutely.
Which I think is a very key point about this program, because what you get out of it is going to be what you put into it. Mm-hmm. If you come into the program and just try to BS your way through everything, it's not going to help you in the long run. And it defeats the whole purpose of being in the counseling field, because a big theme that we've talked about even is you have to help yourself first before you help other people.
Mm-hmm. And one thing about that too is of course we're doing a lot of work. We're doing a lot of writing. Last semester, I think I wrote probably about 45 pages of essay stuff. Yeah. But all of that stuff that you're writing, it's all you know? So it's not you're doing some research, especially these first few semesters, you're not doing as much as we're probably going to be doing later. But it's mostly just talking about yourself, and that topic, and you can write 15 pages. The 15 pages isn't the problem. It's sitting down and writing it. That's the problem.
Yes.
Problem, quote unquote. It's not actually a problem, but it's hard for sure.
Yeah. You'll definitely run into the difficulty of finding the motivation to sit down and get at these papers. Like I mentioned, I have a tendency to dodge or just avoid and escape my issues. And so I look at the computer, I look at the keyboard, and I'm not today.
What if I took a nap? Yes. That one hit me a lot. Literally every time I'd sit down on my computer, I'd be I I would just be so much better at working at this after I took a nap, I'm going to go take a nap for sure. Doesn't go anywhere, though.
Yeah.
As far as like 500 is concerned, though, as soon as you come into this program, you better start figuring out ways to like practice self-care. I think that's probably one of the like biggest things that like, you kind of like are forced to learn it quickly, but like you kind of need to. Like if you don't have a self-care, even like just an activity, a self-care activity, like once you've started 500, you should probably figure out at least one, because those moments when you're like avoiding your essay and you're like avoiding talking about difficult topics, like you need to be able to turn to something to like reground yourself so that you can get through those difficult essays. And we're going to be talking about that later on in the podcast. For
sure. And I would also encourage, get to know the peers around you. It's not just going to be good for like networking in the future, but you might run into some genuinely good people that you really admire and want to be around.
Absolutely.
That's why I'm sitting here with Eric today.
That's true. There's so many good people in every cohort. I mean, they're very rigorous about who they let in, and they do interviews for a reason. The professors want to see what kind of person you are, and if you got into it, like generally, of course, this doesn't apply to everyone, but generally, like the people in this program are genuinely amazing people. For sure.
And when you're in a space with like-minded people, it helps so much. That was one of the things that I definitely noticed transitioning from undergrad to grad school, is that you are all there for a reason, and you're not just taking some general education classes that you don't care about. You're all there for the same reason, and that tends to add a sense of like camaraderie, especially when completing essays. We've definitely had some like late nights in the library, things like that, but we've also hung outside of class, and it's led to some great friendships, honestly.
Absolutely.
It's very nice to make friends that are in the mental health field, for sure. Man.
I mean, I agree. Coming here from Utah, I was terrified of like making new friends, like completely different environment, completely different like setting. It's the same way, but completely different like everything. And I was worried about how I would be perceived and like who I would vibe with, and it's it's been a lot less of an issue than I thought it was going to be. For sure. And this is to be taken with a grain of salt, because not everyone is going to like be the bestest of friends with everybody. But if you're around good people, why not have a good time, right? And it makes getting through the semester all the more pleasing. And you're going to be learning a lot about yourself, and then you can apply that to your friends as well and figure out which ones you actually want to keep around. Yes. Wow. That sounded a little shady. Yeah, and then I'm not talking to Vinny anymore. This is actually the last episode. Yeah. Now, we're transitioning to another topic that I wanted to bring up with you, Eric, because I've thought about it a little bit, and it's about physical health and mental health. And I wanted to know what you thought was more important. We obviously know about like the hierarchy of needs and how physical health always comes first, but I wanted to ask, do you think mental health is as important as physical health? Do you think it's more important, or do you think it's less important? See, this is a topic that hits home. Because as an adult, I tend to think like, oh, mental health is way more important. Like, you need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of your like conflicts in your life, your traumas, and like, really work on yourself so that you can get to a point that, you can reach your goals or whatever. But then I think back to when I was younger and like had no food, or like had no support from family, or like, various things. And then I'm like, well, when I didn't have that proper support to succeed, I didn't, you know, like when I didn't have the right nutrition, when I didn't have the right, you know, everything, like I wasn't able to succeed. I constantly got like D's and F's in school. I like was on the verge of like dropping out before I even like got to like 8th grade. And like all my siblings who were in the same environment also like failed in school and like didn't do well. And we just didn't have the right like support and the right physical health to take care of our mental health. So I think it's almost in a lot of ways there's a constant battle within myself between those two things, like past and present, physical health, mental health, you know, and they all align in two different ways frequently. Like I'm constantly split down the middle in a lot of ways, it seems. So that one's definitely a hard question just because, you know, there's a battle within myself debating that kind of topic all the time.
For sure. For sure. No, yeah, thank you for sharing about your past struggles with like physical health and
very vaguely, but yeah, happy to share.
But I definitely relate to that. Like issues in the home, financial issues, tons of barriers that would have impeded physical health in a number of ways, and also just like academic performance, things like that. When you think about it, like physical health always does come first, because without physical health, we don't live.
Right.
we don't function, right? How you think is always going to come second to your brain being alive.
Yeah.
But I will say, I feel like in the space that we're in now, especially for me, I've found that mental health is kind of a catalyst for my physical health. I've just noticed that when I'm not doing well mentally is where I start to make the poor decisions regarding my physical health, regarding like the things that I'm eating, my hygiene, my daily routines. For example, if I'm having a full-on bed rot day, I'm definitely not getting up to make my own food and like eat clean. And I feel like mentally fogged by the end of the day, versus like on a day that I go outside, I'm sitting in nature, I'm like taking in the sun, or I'm like hanging out with people. Just a day that I would find fulfilling. That's where I'm much more prone to like take better care of myself. That makes sense.
Absolutely. No, I definitely hear you there. And like, trust me, since starting this program, I have had my fair share of bed rot days. Like it's it's almost necessary some days.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, definitely like those days where you're not feeling it mentally, like you're not going to feel it physically for sure. And there's definitely a balance, and that's something that I've definitely been working on too, especially like thinking about using like Gestalt therapy. I feel like it definitely focuses a lot on being present, being mindful, and like a lot of that has to do with like being in tune with your physical self, which is something I am not good at. And you know, I'm working on it and I'm trying to do better at it, but getting in tune with like your physical body and like what your body is telling you, it's hard.
It very much is. It very much is. On the note of like physical health, from someone that used to like use substances very often, I used to like pretty much escape my own body just by being numb from substances, things like that, like dealing with a lot of my issues through drugs and alcohol. And once I stopped that, I started almost becoming like hyper conscious about like my physical body and like how it was feeling.
Like
and
you
now,
can't escape it anymore.
no, yeah, like that's one of the main issues with my anxiety is like I'm fully present with it now. There's no like just dodging it. I'm trying to learn to accept it as part of myself, which is a mental battle for sure. And when I say like mental health is a catalyst for physical health, if you go online on social media, you'll see a bunch of different ways that people try to like almost trick themselves into like living a healthier life. And I feel like to a certain extent that does very much work. Like, for example, without getting super gym bro-ish, when I when I started going to the gym, it was like a chore, right? It was just like I gotta do this. But then like I started trying like different movements, different activities, things like that, and eventually it became less of a chore and more of an outlet and more of like a joyful activity that I want to do. So that change in perception, a change in my mental state, actually benefited my physical health.
Are you saying you tricked yourself into working out?
I think working out tricked myself into me.
Oh, okay. You know, a little existential.
Yeah. But yeah, I genuinely think that if we take into account like the types of lifestyles people tend to have these days, I feel like improving your mental health will also improve your physical health, and
vice versa. It's almost like we're a whole person.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
All right, moving forward. Professionalism in our field. It is a good topic, I feel like, because I think one thing that I wanted to accomplish with doing this podcast is kind of talk about the toxic culture of, you know, white supremacy and Eurocentrism in counseling. Professionalism in the field. That's definitely like, listen, me personally, I hate it. I've definitely always been kind of like rebellious in that sense, but like I feel like labeling it as rebellious is almost invalidating to like the experience of not liking the Eurocentric view and the white supremacist view of professionalism. But professionalism in the field, I think, is definitely like it's shifting right now.
Yeah.
And it's shifting a lot with like liberation psychology and you know, more marginalized people getting into the field of like social work and counseling. And I love where it's headed. Like, I think that the idea of like the mental health system is flawed for sure. And it's very intertwined with the healthcare system and like the idea of being a blank slate and being like the all-knowing person, like directing the person across from you towards better health is dangerous and it's hurtful.
Yeah, for sure. I 100% agree on everything that you're saying. I think professionalism, especially in our field, is revolutionizing, and I think it's changing on the forefront for sure. Something that I learned from a internship that I did when I was living out in SF, I worked in one of the most like low income areas of the city. And we worked with at-risk youth. And something that I learned, because everyone dressed like very casually, and in my head I was just like, oh cool, finally I can just wear whatever the hell I want because I don't have any professional clothes. But I also learned that a lot of the folks that they were working with actually had traumas related around people in uniform.
Absolutely.
Which makes so much sense. You know what I mean? It makes so much sense. And I think it also adds a layer of, like, it takes away the condescending aspect between a client and the worker, right? It feels a lot more personal, which this work is very, very personal.
That's the thing. I feel like professionalism in mental health counseling is like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
Like, you're working with someone one-on-one in an intimate setting, and you're keeping a blank face. You're keeping your cards close to your chest. I don't know. Like, I just think the idea of professionalism is so lost with me as far as like mental health counseling goes. Like,
Yeah.
I am going to be sitting in a room with people from all sorts of different cultures and backgrounds, and I'm going to give them a cookie cutter. This is who I am. This is like, I'm a blank slate. I keep coming back to blank slate, but I think that's the thing that like bugs me the most is like the idea of not bringing yourself to the room.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the biggest thing that's changing is like mental health counselors want to bring themselves to the room because so much of like a lot of the issues in the mental health field is people not trusting mental health counselors because they're not being genuine.
Yeah.
And
they blend in with like other government officials.
right, exactly.
They blend in with doctors, they blend in with firefighters, they blend in with
firefighters.
with police. Like, you never know because a uniform is a uniform.
Right, absolutely.
And at the end of the day, it's slacks with a button-up shirt that's tucked in
In a nice, tidy office.
Yeah.
Sometimes with a desk in between you and them. Like,
super blank.
yeah.
Like, not a lot to it. Just to give like an example of this, my own therapist currently, just our last session, walked in with an anime hoodie on or an anime sweater on.
I love that.
And
like, it's just so real.
it's very real and it gives a lot of personality. And for
Yeah.
someone like me, I appreciate it because I'm a big anime head. And so I talked to him about it and I was like, hey, that sweater's really cool. And then also I was wearing my Spider-Man sweater and he was like, I love your Spider-Man sweater. So that allowed us to connect a little bit deeper just personally, you know what I mean? And he had said, yeah, you know, today I just was not feeling like business casual. And I was
Right.
like, that is totally fine. Please. This feels like so much more comfortable now that you've done that. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think honestly we should just be saving dolling ourselves up for like conference meetings, for
Right.
like dinner parties.
Yeah, we'll
You know what I mean?
destigmatize professionalism in that field, or in that regard later for sure.
Exactly.
I think a lot of this comes from like, you know, kind of the humanistic research that happened, you know, within the last 50 years or whatever, and realizing that the biggest factor in people healing or people benefiting from mental health work is through relationship. Right. So as people start to realize that the main benefit of mental health work is the relationship between the therapist and the client, you know, we start shifting towards like, well, what can we do to make sure that that relationship is positive and that it's genuine, and that inherently goes towards the therapist working towards being more genuine and not putting on a face.
Yes.
And I think we're like the first generation, or not the first generation, but like we are part of the generation of mental health counselors that are really applying that more than past generations.
Taking those ideas and like moving forward with it.
Exactly.
And on that note, Psychology Today, looking for different therapists and like looking for the different approaches that they have. One very key thing is when they take a break from going on and on about how they can help you and talk a little bit about themselves.
Yeah.
You know,
And like focusing less on like, this is where I got my degree, and more about like, this is the type of therapist that I am. And
Yes.
I may or may not be able to help you. Let's see if I can.
exactly.
And like not thinking that you can help everybody. Cause like, listen,
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that I've realized like throughout this program is I'm going to build an extensive referral list, because I want the person who comes in to see me, if I'm not the right therapist, to find the right therapist.
Yeah,
Because it is not easy.
for sure.
So
For sure. And that's the benefit about showing your client who you are, because then they can know right off the bat, like, okay, I'm vibing with this person, I'm not vibing with this person, like, I like this approach, I don't like this approach. And then with that referral list, you could probably give them a good referral to like who they would want to be with or who you think that they wouldn't work well with. And I think it's even beneficial on our end because it allows us to gauge like, okay, this isn't working for this person or this is very much working for this person. And I'm able to connect with this client pretty deeply, right?
Right. As far as professionalism goes, it's ever changing, it's shifting, and I think it's shifting in the right direction.
Yeah, professionalism is stupid. Down with the patriarchy. Free Palestine.
Serve. So to wrap up the podcast this week, like I was saying earlier, we're going to do start a little segment to end things off. It's going to be the self-care corner. As mental health professionals, obviously it's very important to practice self-care, especially with how frequently we're thinking about thinking. So what are you doing this week, Vinny, to practice self-care? And, what's kind of going on where you need to practice self-care?
So actually after we're done recording this, I'm going to go to the beach with Diana. Probably going to have a reading day, hang out a little bit, eat some good food. And then later on tonight, I do have a therapy session. And then over the weekend, I actually have a pretty loaded weekend because tomorrow I'm going with Diana and her nephew to an anime convention. Gonna be very fun. He's really hyped for it. He's gonna cosplay and everything. So,
ooh, what's he cosplaying as?
He's cosplaying as a character from Jujutsu Kaisen. It's one of the more like popular animes right now, but he has just like cool streetwear attire and he has pink hair. So
I love it.
Yeah. Very hyped for that. He's very excited and I love spending time with him. And then there's also a graduation party that I'm probably going to just spend a couple hours at because it's on a damn Sunday for some reason. You can't party on a Sunday. I'm sorry. That's a reset day.
That's a reset day for sure.
And just really prep for next week. Try to like brace myself a little bit better, build a little bit better of a schedule. What about you?
So it sounds like you're doing a lot. On the flip side, honestly, like around my house right now, I don't know if it's because of the summertime, but fucking chaos. Like our apartment complex has just decided to like start fixing everything, Like some kids threw a ball through our window. Not through our window, but like it hit our window and it cracked it. So we had to like bug them about fixing it. And then like our fucking stove just randomly stopped working. Our fucking toilet's been fucking acting up.
No carbonara?
No carbonara, dog. Zero. We've been straight air fryer food, chicken nuggies, French fries, corn dogs.
Okay.
Taking care of business, but at what cost?
Right.
So no stove. Toilet's been acting up. Like, life's been a little chaotic, right?
Yeah.
So, as far as self-care goes, it's almost like getting back to a middle point. Like not even focusing too much on like getting to a place where I feel good, just getting to a place where I feel fine. So kind of recognizing that, life's been a lot recently and then not holding myself to too high of standards as far as like what I should be feeling. So, taking the time to make sure everything's fixed or like problem solve a little bit so that conflict isn't resonating in my life and sticking around longer than it should. And then, if I get a shot, I'm going to make some carbonara for sure. Hopefully they fix the stove soon, but we did just get a hot plate to kind of problem solve that. But I could really go for some carbonara right now because that's like my go-to self-care is making myself like my comfort foods, And I've started to realize that all of my comfort foods I make like in a frying pan. So that's definitely been harder, but like, like I was saying earlier, like everybody should have their like one go-to thing. My go-to thing has been making carbonara. So
Yeah.
One thing that I am doing this weekend is going to the thing I invited you to, and you said I'm going with Devin and Lauren and her sister to Korean barbecue.
Nice.
And then to the movies and then gelato afterwards. So that'll be a really good, like, getting out of the house, going to a third location. That's another thing in grad school. Find your third location. Figure out a place to go that isn't just home, like where you're doing homework or working.
Yeah.
But, going to a third location, watching some movies, getting some good food. That's always a good one for me, I think, too. Just like getting some good food. It's revigorating. Like,
yes.
So good. So hopefully that gets me a little reset, but definitely like preparing for next week is a big one. Time management is going to be huge this summer because everything's going so quickly. So,
yeah. Well, also it sounds like you're trying to be more forgiving on yourself, especially
absolutely.
since there's just like so much chaos. It seems like in your like recent life, and it's maybe like minor, less like directly impactful issues, but those things can definitely pile up, and still affect us mentally.
Right.
So I'm glad you're being a little bit more forgiving on yourself, and hopefully that schedule really does come around. And it's important to notice that this is all happening right at the beginning of the semester, right as things start. But I definitely do have a belief in you that you'll, get your schedule going because you're a very calculated person.
I appreciate that.
But man, no carbonara.
No carbonara
That's
is
tough.
hard.
That's tough.
Listen, if anybody ever wants to be my friend, just say, "Can you make me some carbonara?" I'll be your friend because I want to make you carbonara.
That's tough. I was gonna say too. I really liked what you were saying about comfort foods being like a good source of like mental health, because that first bite into some good food just eases the soul. And something I've been on a bender about recently is milkshakes. I don't know what it is about milkshakes. I had my first milkshake for the first time in like 2 years. And mind you, this is after we're talking about physical health. Just ignore that segment.
That's okay.
But I had my first one in over like 2 years, and just colors were brighter. The wind was more crisp. Like everything just made sense.
That's fair. Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest like atrocity. I always fuck up that word. One of the biggest atrocities. One of the biggest atrocities within our capitalistic society is like beauty standards and like health standards.
Yeah.
Everybody should be able to enjoy food.
For sure.
Unfortunately, not everybody can because of fucking fuck ass beauty standards.
Yeah, it's a really big issue, and it's I know we mentioned this in 523, but also the dietary restrictions that we have in America are so backwards, because we have these upholding standards of like beauty and physical health, and yet we're supplied with the most like sodium and calorie dense foods.
And like preservative full, like just bad.
Yes.
There's no winning.
No winning at all.
Yeah, definitely. Like within the United States, there's no winning when it comes to food, even though that's like, like culturally, like such a big part of like who people are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like enjoying food can be such a good like release, such a good self-care technique. And it's
dude, as someone
stigmatized
that's like,
so much.
As someone that's super assimilated and has little connection to his cultural roots, food is like the one thing that I connect to my people with.
I tried that. I don't even like Irish food that much.
Oh man, you know what?
Don't let him know this, but beef and Guinness stew didn't fuck with it.
I actually had housemates that were part Irish, and on St. Patty's Day they made it was like some kind of like fried cabbage dish. That was crazy, low-key. I'm not gonna lie, pretty fire. But to each their own.
To each their own. Listen, I was a picky eater growing up, so to even try new foods with you like all the time is enough for me. 'Cause
Oh yeah, y'all.
it can't be expected that I like everything. That's for sure.
Eric is really doing his best to broaden his horizons as far as food, and he's been doing great.
I appreciate that. One thing that I was gonna say, as far as like the program goes, and something that I've really appreciated is like being able to learn about like these theories and apply them to our lives. Like, because I think one of the things that brought me to Gestalt so heavily was like how almost opposite to me it was. You know, I was obviously drawn to it for certain reasons, and like it aligned with me in a lot of ways, and it aligns with me in a lot of ways. But like, I think it's almost like my unconscious mind knew that I needed to work on being grounded and being present and being like mindful of my body. And it's just so fun to like apply that stuff and really start to like change your life throughout the grad school program. Mm-hmm. That's just something that I want to talk about.
Yeah, no. And I think outside of the basic techniques of grounding yourself, being more forgiving with yourself, like providing empathy, things like that, keep yourself a blank slate because you're going to experience so many different
Don't say
things.
that word. We just talked about professionalism.
Fuck.
Oh, you think we should be blank slates, Vinny? Let's talk about it.
Keep yourself a blank canvas. Keep yourself
Give it an artistic spin.
There we go. Yeah. Keep yourself a blank canvas because you're going to experience a bunch of different approaches. You're going to experience a bunch of different activities. I feel like Dr. Price really does his best to incorporate different breathing techniques, and they're all super different, and they all emphasize a different aspect. Like some might be imagery, some might be paying attention to like your aches and pains, things like that. Down from those little nuances all the way to like the different approaches of the different professors, you're going to experience a lot of different things, and it's going to be important to like keep an open mind so that you aren't shutting out something that you might actually find useful or find just interesting in general.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's going to be a lot of different modalities that differ a lot from each other that are going to be introduced to you. And I think it's important to take all of them critically so that you can learn whether you actually like it or don't like it and want to apply it to your own work or not. All right, folks. That was the first unacademic episode of Gradual Growth. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it. For the folks that know us or the folks that watch, please feel free to reach out and let us know what you'd like to hear more about. If someone comes across this that is in one of the newer cohorts, please hit us with any questions that you might have. We're more than happy to give any guidance that you may want.
And I think I speak for Vinny and myself when I say this, but like we want to help the next cohorts coming in, and like I think in a lot of ways we were kind of blind coming into this, and we want to make sure that that's less the case for anybody who is coming into the program next year or the year after that. So
yeah. And again, take our talks with a grain of salt because we're just a year in. We hardly know anything ourselves.
That's true. And we're just learning as we go, and we're just trying to share the experience of the journey.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Well, take care. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.